All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are reacting to the news of Tommy Rees leaving Notre Dame to be the offensive coordinator at Alabama. Kind of a shocking bit of news here in early February, Nick. You know, when we did our candidates list a couple weeks ago, we did not have Tommy Rees as one of them, but they go ahead and make a splash hire here, and we're going to break it all down. First, we're going to talk about Bill O'Brien for a second. We won't last long on this because we talked about it and, touched on it a good bit over the last couple of weeks during this offseason. But Bill O'Brien, you weren't exactly thrilled with him. You were pretty happy that he was departing. I wasn't as harsh towards Bill O'Brien, though. This is a team that significantly improved the running game from 21 to 22, went from 150 yards to 195 yards per game. Jahmyr Gibbs was heavily utilized, 44 receptions, led the team. So I had no problem with Gibbs' usage. And he also produced Bryce Young as the Heisman Trophy winner his first year as a starter in 2021. 4,800 yards, 47 touchdowns, some school records. I know that you weren't exactly thrilled with the play calling, especially in 2022. Bryce Young really had to bail out this offense at times, Gibbs as well. But throughout the 15 weeks they played and whatnot, Alabama did great continuity with their pass catchers throughout the year. That certainly seemed to be a big problem. The lack of vertical speed that they had a season ago, they didn't have that this year, and I think that was a big problem. That certainly did not help the offense, and you weren't exactly happy with how Bill O'Brien adjusted to those deficits.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bill O'Brien, I think the fan base as a whole was a little too hard. He got a lot of blame for me, especially, I think some people wanted to blame him for the 2 losses this year against Tennessee and LSU. I don't think he deserves any loss against Tennessee. I think that's not his. They scored a ton of points today. I think the LSU game, he deserves some blame. Some of those play calling, especially in the fourth quarter, it wasn't for the fact that Bryce bailed us out. That game would not overtime, on fourth down, suspect play calls, same thing in the Texas game, very suspect play calls on fourth down, bad play calls on, third and short, kind of set up plays that just didn't make any sense. No pre-snap motion really at all this past season. I'm happy to see him going. I think Tommy Rees adds, a really exciting new dynamic to this offense.
Now, who is Tommy Rees? He's a 30-year-old from Los Angeles, California. He was a quarterback at Notre Dame for 4 seasons, 2010 through 2013. Very respectable quarterback at that. Became a coach quickly after he graduated. Spent time with Notre Dame from 2017 to 2022 as a QB coach from 17 to 19. In the last 3 years, he's been the offensive play caller for them. And now he's leaving, Nick. This is very surprising. No one really expected this one to happen. My quick thoughts, though, I think the Bama, they've always been known as a team with a great offensive line and physicality and to win with the run game. And since Lane Kiffin arrived many years ago, almost seems like a decade ago at this point, it's been, more of a modern style offense. And I think we might see a blend here of Tommy Rees because Bama, they made that transition very smoothly from I formation, smash mouth football to, a lot of empty sets, airing it out a lot more, compared to a team like Wisconsin, Iowa, that have yet to even attempt a transition. Stanford, I think, is a good example of a team that was trying to transition, and they failed miserably. Alabama did not. They did that with grace, and they've ended up putting up, a number of quarterbacks into the NFL. So it was a flawless transition, Nick, but I feel like Nick Saban, despite the effortless transition, he's looking to get back to what they used to play. I think that's why we're going to see a blend of things, though, because it's been so successful for them to open things up a little bit. But Tommy Rees' scheme, this is a run-heavy offense, utilize a lot of 12 personnel, plenty of tight ends, a lot of inside running. This offense does feature a handful of RPOs, and we'll get to how that might fit Jalen Milroe or Ty Simpson here in a couple minutes. But, again, this is an RPO offense that mainly checks down in the passing game, the running backs, tight ends, a lot of screens. And I think that was the offset, the inability to get separation from their pass catchers, Nick, because obviously Michael Mayer the past couple of seasons has been a phenomenal tight end, and the personnel at wide receiver, not exactly a strong suit for them. It's not going to be a problem here at Alabama, so I think they will be able to generate that space. This was a team last year that had only 4 passing plays of 40-plus yards, that being Notre Dame. That was 117th in college football. That's the same rank as UConn and Iowa, Nick. That's not good. Tommy Rees opted not to follow Brian Kelly to LSU last very high salary that would have made him one of the top paid assistants in college football. He makes this move a year later to the same division. I kind of want to get your thoughts, Nick, on why this move makes sense for Rees, and why do you think Nick Saban went ahead and made this hire, because it appears to bring them back to his old style of football.
Yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense involved. You just nailed it there. Tommy Rees, it looked like he was going to take a job when Brian Kelly left. Rumors he was going to go to LSU, potentially another high-paying coordinator's job. He stays at Notre Dame, which was a huge get for them. The reaction on social media was massive, right? He had spent 2 years at that point being the offensive. The fans had loved what he had been able to do in those early ages. They were having strong tight end play, really strong running offense. A lot of ground game for this Notre Dame offense. And this past season, the offense was good. So, 31.8 points per game, 413 total points on the season. Solid statistics overall. They were pretty solid on the ground as well. 532 rushing attempts overall on the season. This was a good year in offense. It didn't start out great, but as the season progressed, they got better and better on offense. I think this is an exciting hire for Alabama. This is not a could potentially make this move because it seemed like he was going to stay at his alma mater, and I, wouldn't have blamed him if he wanted to. But here he takes a huge jump up, moves to the SEC, and steps into a position where he's going to have a lot of talent. Notre Dame is certainly a talented school, but you're right. The wide receiving talent in Notre Dame is not great, right? So now he's going to have a bunch of talented wide receivers. Great opportunity to show the talent they have. He's got a quarterback battle here. He can kind of manage and pick his quarterback. He's going to take some time to practice, figure out whether he wants to start Simpson or Jalen Milroe. And if he doesn't start Jalen Milroe, I'm sure he can find a way to get Milroe involved with the running game, considering how run-heavy the offenses in the past have been for Tommy Rees. I think this is simply because he brings a new, young dynamic. I wanted someone that was younger, has good experience, but someone that was younger and kind of grow as the game. And of bringing back an older coordinator, former coordinator, someone from the NFL. I wanted someone young, a fresh offensive mind, and this is definitely one of the brighter ones in college football.
Now, Tommy Rees has certainly had his struggles. In early 2021, they had very shaky O-line play, which was a big shock, a horrid running game. They were able to escape some of those contests with some victories, though, despite turmoil, like against Florida State, Toledo, Purdue. Had a big effort in the fourth quarter against Wisconsin, mainly because of a passing attack that was able to generate some yards, not so much efficiency, but they were able to survive due to Jack Cohen, who I thought was a terrible fit for that scheme at the time, and he ended up having a great year, 3,100 yards in that system. In the running game, ended up getting into gear that second half of that year in 2021, and with that came great balance. I think that's what's going to make Alabama potentially scary, is when the offensive line's clicking and that running game is clicking, which at Alabama you know it's going to do. It can really open up this dynamic of heavy play action, great play from its crossers. It can allow him to, sort of utilize a vertical passing game, which he certainly has in his playbook. You don't see it a lot because sometimes just the play action's not working for Notre Dame. Again, the personnel doesn't always call for it. But when you watch the tape, you certainly see a lot of that. And some of that was the same in 2022, Nick, where this offense early on in the year really struggled to run the football. And then towards the back end of the season, they really were able to pick things up. They had 240-plus rushing yards in 4 of the last 6 games on the year. And with that came, pretty respectable balance. But at the same time, the 2 games they didn't hit 100 yards in were close games. One they lost to USC, and then a very, a 3-point win over Navy. So quarterback play, Drew Pine was that guy for them, which I don't think very highly of him. Now he's going to be exposed to some higher end talent in all facets of the position. The upside really seems there for Tommy Rees. I think that's why Alabama made this hire. I think one thing that stands out about him is accountability. In late October, he said, if we don't execute a play, it's a bad play call, point blank. That's, great accountability there from your young play caller. And that's where the inconsistencies come in the hand, though, because after he said that, the running game really started to take shape. But again, 2 of those games over the last 6, 100 rushing yards. They had less than 100 rushing yards in them, and one of them was against USC, which is not a very good defense one bit. So the accountability stands out to me, Nick, and him not having a great quarterback talent-wise over the last couple of seasons. I think that's something that's really going to add an interesting dynamic here, because that will not be a problem here at Alabama.
Yes, I have. That video went viral in the past. I saw it circulating around today of him on the phone yelling at his quarterback on the sideline, trying to get his quarterback to take accountability for the mistakes that he made. That's the type of attitude that we love at Alabama, right? This is, Nick Saban type of attitude. Work hard every single day, put in the effort, you're going to get the results. The sort of work ethic and speed and desire that we need in an offensive coordinator. 188.9 yards per game on the ground last year, 30 in the country. I think with the talent that Alabama recruits at running back, I think they're going to be able to produce a lot of yards on the ground. Over 200 yards per game is certainly a possibility in this offense. That's exactly what Alabama needs. Need to get back to that ground and pound kind of mentality. I think Alabama has the best chance to do so with a coordinator like this. He also has a great playbook that he can open up through the air. And so I think this hire makes a lot of sense for me. Some people are a little concerned because, lack of inexperience, and they wanted maybe someone with a bigger name, a Cliff Kingsbury, someone like that. Some Alabama fans are disappointed with the name, but I think this is the best option that was available. Again, we didn't really think this was an option because you can't blame Tommy Rees for staying as alma mater had that been able to do. But Alabama was able to lure him away. Alabama comes calling. I guess you answer the phone, right? So I think this is a huge step for Alabama as they kind of rebuild with 2 new coordinators heading into a season after, we'll be honest, 2 years in a row of disappointment without a national championship.
Now, Rees certainly had no issues either with the idea of Marcus Freeman bringing in an offensive analyst. Alabama typically has a veteran in that role to help in the booth. So I really think this could really help blossom the tide, a young 30-year-old that takes accountability in there with some veterans, Nick Saban, of course, as well. Depending on who they hire for the defensive coordinator, I would identify a trend here that Alabama wants to get back to dominating in the trenches. That notion goes to Georgia. I think they've taken that the reins of that title because Alabama for years, that's where they dominated. Offensive line, defensive line. They've taken a bit of a step back. Of course, they're still top 3, top 5 in college football in those areas. But they've certainly taken a step back, Nick. So I think that's one thing that could certainly be a part of this hire is that Nick Saban identified the issues and he's going to try and fix them the best he can. And I think, hires like this will certainly allow them to do that.
I agree. We haven't seen the domination on the offense and defensive line that we had in the past, right? Especially defensive line. The defensive line has struggled to get after the quarterback in some situations. The interior defensive line, the offensive line has looked a lot of times, it's a jailbreak up front and Bryce Young's got to fight for his life, right? So now I think this is a good opportunity to bring in 2 new players to bring in the defense. Of course, Tommy Rees here is to build a strong battle in the trenches, a great offensive line that's going to fight in, get down on the knees and grind out the result for the quarterback and give whoever the quarterback is, Milroe or Simpson, the best opportunity to succeed by giving them a nice clean pocket.
Yeah, the Alabama running game, especially in the second half of the year, they were just awful, I would say. And if you look at the numbers, like 29 yards against Mississippi State, only had 108 in a close game on the road in Oxford. Nothing that was too special from the Alabama running game, so it's certainly going to be interesting to see how they fix that. And to wrap this up, Nick, I want to talk about how this will be impactful for Alabama in 2023 at the quarterback position. Jalen Milroe, great runner, has a strong arm, but he struggled to be confident with the ball as a passer and to be accurate. Single-handedly kept Texas A&M in that game, but they almost lost. They had to win that one on the final play. Ty Simpson, on the other hand, seems like this hire is really tailor-made around his skill set because, you've seen what Phil Longo can do with his RPO-style offense. QB's legs are heavily a part of it. And I think of that, a bit of that page will be taken out of his book here as Rees transitions to Alabama. And the reason I say that is because the offense Simpson played in high school was a spread option attack. Of course, Milroe, he's a big playmaker with his feet, and I think he might be utilized, like you said earlier. But Simpson, he already has some of those attributes that are quite underrated. Running the offense that he ran in high school allows you to develop good feet, quickness, football IQ of running the football. We've already talked about how Ty Simpson's a Matt Corral type of player. Because those characteristics also translate to being stout in the pocket. I think he's better than Jalen Milroe. We both accept Ty Simpson to be the starter, but I really feel like this offense is going to be really tailor-made around his skill set with Rees coming in this year.
I agree. I think this is a great opportunity to build an offense around Simpson's abilities. I think Milroe will still have an opportunity to be a part of this team. I think he'll have a potential to be some sort of running back, quarterback role, special, kind of sub into different sort of plays. The ball necessary. You'll get those short yardage situations. I think Jalen Milroe is a great runner and has that potential. I just don't know if I trust him as a passer. Great some of the defenses are in the SEC. You want to have someone that can throw the ball. So I think Ty Simpson's going to be the one that gets a nod here. I think Tommy Rees is going to end up selecting him to be his quarterback. But I'm excited. They're going to build together all off season and kind of develop and build a playbook that's going to work great for this Alabama Crimson Tide offense.
Yeah, that's going to be it for today's episode, guys. As always, Nick, I appreciate you joining me. We'll do this again in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, whenever the defensive coordinator hire is made for Alabama, especially if it's as big as a splash as this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's no hiding that I'm excited that we have 2 new coordinators coming in. I think this is a great one with Tommy Rees from Notre Dame. I love the film this past season. The offense able to do on the ground. Fantastic stats. The offense looked sluggish in the first 2 games, but they turned it around and had a good season overall. I think this is a great young hire. I'm excited for the future of Alabama. Nick Saban has a process. He trusts his process, and he's building something. They're going to get Alabama competing again and try to knock Georgia off the throne that they put themselves on.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.